It was supposed to be just another glamorous night, another red carpet, another event filled with smiles and flashing cameras. But that evening, something different was in the air. The world didn't know it yet, but two people who had once shared the kind of chemistry that can't be scripted were about to cross paths for the first time in years. CanYaman and Demet Özdemir, the names alone carried enough electricity to light up the entire event. When Can stepped out of the black car, the crowd erupted. His tailored suit, his calm yet powerful presence, he was the image of confidence. But inside, something felt off. He didn't know why, but as he walked down the red carpet, an uneasy feeling grew stronger with each step. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe it was fate preparing him for what was about to happen. At that exact moment, on the opposite side of the hall, Demet arrived. Dressed in an elegant black gown, her hair flowing effortlessly, she looked every bit like the woman who had learned to hide her pain behind grace. When she smiled for the cameras, it wasn't the radiant smile from years ago, it was softer, calmer, and perhaps a little heavier. The photographers called her name, the flashes went wild. Demet. Over here. She turned, and that's when it happened. Their eyes met. For a split second, the noise disappeared. The music faded, the voices blurred, and the entire world seemed to hold its breath. Can froze. His usual composure vanished as if someone had pulled the ground from beneath him. All those memories he had buried, the laughter, the silence, the things left unsaid, came rushing back with a force he wasn't ready for. Demet didn't move. She didn't smile. She simply looked at him, not with anger, not with sadness, but with the calm of someone who had already made peace with her heartbreak. It wasn't revenge. It was closure staring him in the eyes. People around them had no idea. Cameras captured the moment, but not the story behind it. To everyone else, it was just two stars acknowledging each other at a public event. But for them, it was years of unspoken words compressed into a single glance. Can blinked, trying to collect himself. He turned slightly, pretending to adjust his cufflinks, but his heart was racing. Demet took a deep breath and gracefully walked past him, her perfume lingering in the air, familiar, haunting, unforgettable. And in that instant, Can realized something terrifying: he wasn't over her. Not even close. Later that night, fans would flood social media with clips and photos, Can and Demet in the same place again. Look at the way he looks at her. Did you see her expression? But what no one knew was what came next, the moment that would leave even Can himself speechless. The crowd cheered, the music boomed, and journalists fought for the best shot, but behind all the glitter, the air was heavy, charged with something that neither fame nor applause could erase. When Demet walked past Can, she felt the tremor in her chest she thought she had buried long ago. It wasn't love. It wasn't anger. It was that cruel in-between feeling of remembering what once made you feel alive. Backstage, she excused herself from the press line. Just a minute, she whispered to her manager. Her smile faded the moment she turned the corner, away from the flashing lights. She leaned against the cold wall, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. The echoes of his voice still played in her mind, not from tonight, but from the past. I'll always be there for you. She bit her lip, trying not to cry. It wasn't the promise that hurt, it was how easily it had been broken. Meanwhile, on the other side of the stage, Can was struggling to appear composed. His assistant handed him a glass of water. You okay? She asked quietly. He nodded, but his gaze remained distant. He had faced international interviews, harsh critics, and endless rumors, but nothing had ever shaken him like that brief, silent moment with Demet. He could still see her eyes. Calm. Strong. Untouchable. It made him realize something terrifying: she had healed, and he hadn't. As he stood there, his thoughts drifted back to the last time they had spoken, the argument that ended everything. It wasn't loud or cruel, just final. You're too focused on what people think, she had told him. And you're too afraid to be honest, he had replied. Two hearts speaking different languages, both too proud to translate. A photographer suddenly appeared backstage, snapping pictures of Ken while he was lost in thought. "Smile, please," the man said cheerfully. Ken forced one, but it was empty. Later, when that photo hit the internet, fans would praise his mysterious look. No one would guess that he was looking at the very person who once made him believe in forever. Demet returned to the event hall, face composed once again. The public would never know the storm that had passed behind her calm demeanor. But one camera caught a brief glance, a soft, almost invisible tremble in her eyes as she looked toward the exit where Ken had just disappeared. That clip would later go viral. Demet Özdemir holds back tears as CanYaman leaves. Thousands would analyze it frame by frame, but only they knew the truth, that for a moment, the past had returned, and neither of them was ready for it. And yet, the night wasn't over. Something unexpected was still waiting, something that would make Can's reaction the one everyone would be talking about for months. When the event moved into the after party, the air grew warmer, the lights dimmer, and the conversations louder. People mingled, laughed, and toasted to success, but Ken wasn't really there. His body moved among the crowd, shaking hands, posing for photos, smiling politely, but his mind was still replaying that single moment from the red carpet. Her eyes. Her silence. Her strength. He found himself scanning the room unconsciously. And then, suddenly, there she was. Across the hall, standing near a group of producers, holding a glass of water, laughing at something one of them said. That laugh. Even after all this time, it still hit him the same way. He could feel his pulse quicken. For a second, he forgot the cameras, the noise, the people. All he saw was her. "Don't," his manager whispered, sensing his tension. But Ken didn't listen. He started walking toward her. Not fast, not hesitantly, but with the quiet determination of someone who'd already made up his mind. Demet noticed him long before he reached her. The laughter around her faded, her smile softened, and she turned slightly, as if bracing herself for impact. The producers she was speaking with noticed the sudden shift in atmosphere. One of them glanced at Ken and whispered, "Isn't that?" But before he could finish, Ken was already standing just a few steps away. For a few seconds, they simply looked at each other. No words. No forced smiles. Just silence thick enough to make the world around them disappear. "Demet," he said quietly, almost as if afraid of hearing his own voice. She blinked, steadying herself. Ken, her tone was calm, but her eyes betrayed her. There was a flicker of something, not anger, not love, but something raw and unguarded. He took a deep breath. "You look good." She smiled faintly, that polite kind of smile you'd give someone who used to mean everything. "So do you." It was simple. Harmless. But it carried years of history behind it. Before he could say anything more, a journalist approached, phone in hand. "Can. A photo with Demet, please. The fans will go crazy." Ken froze. For a second, he didn't know what to do. Demet looked at him, waiting for his reaction. He hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. She gently placed her glass down and smiled at the journalist. "Maybe another time," she said softly, before walking away. Ken watched her go, helpless. The journalist frowned and turned back to him. "Did I say something wrong?" He didn't answer. He just stared after her, his jaw tight, his chest rising and falling with a mix of regret and realization. That was the moment he couldn't hide anymore. No cameras, no interviews, nothing could cover what was written all over his face. The man who had once walked away without looking back now couldn't stop looking. When the night began to wind down, the music softened, and the crowd started thinning out, but CanYaman remained frozen in place. His heart felt heavy, a weight he hadn't carried in years, maybe because he'd been too proud to admit it was still there. The moment Demet walked away, something inside him cracked. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was realization, the kind that burns quietly. He excused himself from his group and stepped out onto the terrace, where the cool night air brushed against his face. The city lights shimmered below like 1,000 tiny reminders of everything he'd lost. He ran a hand through his hair, leaned on the railing, and whispered under his breath, "Why now? Why her?" But fate wasn't done with him yet. Inside the hall, one of the event photographers, still recording for behind-the-scenes footage, accidentally caught something no one was supposed to see. Through a half-open curtain, his camera captured Ken on that terrace, head down, eyes glistening under the soft light. For the first time, he wasn't the confident, untouchable star everyone admired. He was just a man struggling to keep himself together after facing the ghost of his past. "Ken," a soft voice called. He turned around. It was one of his friends from the industry, someone who knew both him and Demet well. "You okay?" He forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." But the friend didn't buy it. "I saw you two earlier. You still care, don't you?" Ken didn't answer. He looked back at the skyline, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't just stop caring for someone who changed you." The friend nodded silently and left him alone. A few minutes later, Demet walked out through the same terrace door. Not realizing he was still there. She stopped when she saw him. The silence between them was deafening, but somehow, not uncomfortable. For a long moment, they just stood there, separated by a few steps, staring at the same skyline, as if the city below was holding all the words they could never say. Finally, Demet broke the silence. "You don't have to explain, Ken." He looked at her, his eyes filled with something raw and real. "Maybe not, but I wish I had." She sighed softly, the faintest smile forming. "It wouldn't change anything." He nodded, because deep down, he knew she was right. That short, unplanned exchange, unseen by most, became the final piece of closure neither of them expected. The next morning, that behind-the-scenes video leaked online. It wasn't scandalous or dramatic. It was quiet. Emotional. Real. The clip showed Ken standing alone, looking lost, while Demet's silhouette passed behind him. Fans around the world flooded the comments, "He still loves her. Look at his eyes. That's not acting." And maybe they were right. Because that was the moment, the one no one was supposed to see, when CanYaman finally stopped pretending. The leaked video spread like wildfire. Within hours, millions had seen it. Hashtags filled social media, #CanAndDemet, #TheLook, #UnfinishedStory. Fans posted edits, old interviews, even moments from their series. Pairing the old smiles with the new silence. The world was once again obsessed, but for Can and Demet, it wasn't entertainment. It was reopening a wound they had tried to heal in private. Demet woke up to her phone buzzing nonstop. Her manager called immediately, panicked, "It's everywhere. They're saying you two had a moment last night." She rubbed her temples, exhaled slowly, and said, "Let them talk. I'm done explaining the past." But her voice trembled. Because even though she sounded calm, part of her heart had started whispering, did he still feel something? Meanwhile, in Rome, Ken sat in silence, scrolling through the flood of clips and articles. One particular frame stopped him, that still image of himself on the terrace, looking lost under the night sky. It was painful to see himself that way, vulnerable, human, undone. But the caption underneath hurt even more. He looked at her like he finally realized what he lost. For once, the internet had said something true. Later that evening, he opened his phone, went to her page, and stared at her most recent photo. No caption. Just her eyes, calm, distant, unreadable. He typed something in the message box, deleted it, then typed again. This time, he didn't overthink it. He just let his heart speak. "I meant every word that night. I just didn't know how to say it." He didn't wait for a reply. Maybe he didn't expect one. But somewhere across the sea, in a quiet apartment in Istanbul, Demet saw the notification light up her phone. Her heart skipped a beat. She opened the message, read it twice, and then smiled, not because it made her happy, but because it finally made sense. She replied simply, "You don't need to explain anymore. I understood long before you did." And that was it. No drama. No grand reunion. Just two people, finally speaking the truth in the simplest way possible. When there was nothing left to prove. Days later, Demet gave an interview. When asked about the viral video, she smiled gently and said, "Sometimes life gives you moments you didn't expect. But not all of them are meant to last. Some are just meant to remind you of who you were, and how far you've come." Her voice was steady, but her eyes softened, the kind of look that says she had made peace with her past. Can, on the other hand, avoided interviews for weeks. When he finally appeared on a talk show, the host tried to joke, "The world's talking about your emotional moment. Any comments?" Can paused, leaned back, and gave a faint smile. "It's funny," he said, "how people think one look tells the whole story. But sometimes that look is just goodbye." That sentence echoed across the internet. Fans dissected it, analyzed it, cried over it, but for him, it wasn't a performance. It was the most honest thing he'd said in a long time. Months later, their paths crossed again at another event. There were no cameras this time, no screaming fans, no questions. Just a quiet hallway. They passed each other, exchanged a nod, and smiled, a real one, not the kind made for the press. And that was their ending, not a reunion, not a heartbreak, but something deeper. Acceptance. As Demet walked away, she thought of how far she'd come from that girl who once cried over unanswered messages. And Can, watching her go, finally whispered what he couldn't say when the world was watching, "I never stopped caring." But by then, it didn't need to be said out loud. Because the silence between them said it all.